In the far reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, on a planet where the sky shimmered with 1,000 hues of violet and green, a dramatic series of events was unfolding. The planet Zillar Prime, known for its harsh laws and even harsher punishments, was about to witness an unprecedented act of mercy. Dr. Elias Vaughn, an astrobiologist from Earth, was on a mission to study the unique flora and fauna of Zillar Prime. He had not expected to find himself in the middle of a political upheaval, nor did he expect to become entangled in the fate of a young alien girl named Mira. Mira was unlike any being Elias had encountered. Her skin was a luminescent blue, dotted with tiny specks that twinkled like stars. Her eyes, large and expressive, were a deep shade of purple that seemed to hold the mysteries of her world. She belonged to the Zeltrons, a minority tribe on Zillar Prime, often persecuted by the ruling factions. On the day they met, Mira was bound in chains, surrounded by a jeering crowd in the central execution square of Zillar Prime's capital city. She had been falsely accused of espionage, a crime punishable by death. The real reason behind her sentence was much more sinister, a power play by the ruling class to intimidate the Zeltrons into submission. Elias, who had been passing by the square on his way to a research site, stopped dead in his tracks at the sight. Something within him stirred, a deep, primal call to action. He knew he could not just walk away. Armed only with his knowledge of intergalactic law and his own moral compass, he approached the executioner's platform. "Wait," he shouted, his voice cutting through the noise of the crowd. His sudden intervention drew surprised looks from the onlookers and a scowl from the hooded executioner. Elias climbed the steps to the platform, his heart pounding in his chest. "This execution cannot proceed," he declared boldly, standing beside Mira. "I invoke the Galactic Council's Statute 7.03 on the rights of sentient beings. I demand a stay of execution and a review of her case." The crowd murmured, and the executioner paused, unsure. It was rare for anyone to challenge the authority of Zillar's rulers, much less a foreigner. "Why should we listen to you, Earthling?" sneered a voice from the crowd. It belonged to a high-ranking official of Zillar Prime. "Because," Elias continued, mustering all his confidence, "I am here under the protection and authority of the Galactic Council. If you proceed with this execution without a fair trial, you risk sanctions that could include trade embargoes and diplomatic isolation." The threat was real, and it resonated with some of the officials present. After a tense discussion among themselves, they agreed to postpone the execution, allowing time for an official inquiry into Mira's case. Grateful yet bewildered, Mira looked at Elias, her eyes welling up with tears. "Why did you help me?" she whispered in her melodious voice, the first words she ever spoke to him. "I couldn't just watch an innocent being punished," Elias replied, meeting her gaze. "No one should be treated this way." As they led Mira away to a temporary holding cell, Elias promised her, "I will do everything in my power to prove your innocence." From that moment, a bond was forged between the human and the alien girl, a bond that would grow stronger with each passing day, challenging their beliefs, their loyalties, and ultimately, their hearts. In the cold, sterile environment of the detention center, as Elias prepared his defense for Mira, he knew that saving her was just the beginning. Little did he know, his act of kindness would lead him on a journey beyond his wildest dreams, where love and fate would intertwine in the vast expanse of the galaxy. Elias spent the following days buried in legal texts and consultation with local advocates, determined to dismantle the charges against Mira. With each passing hour, his connection to this strange and mesmerizing world deepened, driven by his commitment to justice and the silent plea he saw in Mira's eyes. The deeper Elias dug into the case, the more it became apparent that Mira was caught in a web of deceit spun by Zillar Prime's ruling elite. He uncovered encrypted communications between high-ranking officials that hinted at a conspiracy to eliminate the Zeltrons as a threat to their power. The evidence was circumstantial, but compelling. Meanwhile, Mira remained confined, her luminous eyes dimming with each day away from the natural light of her world. During his visits, Elias taught her about Earth and its diverse cultures. In return, Mira shared stories of her people's heritage and their connection to the celestial phenomena of Zellar Prime. These exchanges forged a rare understanding between them, transcending the barriers of their vastly different origins. As the date of the trial approached, tension on Zellar Prime escalated. The city buzzed with rumors of unrest among the Zeltrons, who saw Mira's fate as a symbol of their own struggle. Elias received veiled threats warning him to abandon the case, but these only strengthened his resolve. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Elias presented the evidence he had gathered, exposing the flimsy nature of the charges against Mira. He highlighted the encrypted messages, arguing that they pointed to a plot against Mira designed to intimidate her tribe into submission. His arguments were precise and impassioned, drawing grudging admiration from even his adversaries. The opposition was slick and well-prepared, casting doubts on the authenticity of the evidence and questioning Elias's motives. However, Elias's meticulous preparation paid off. He discredited their key witnesses and turned their own arguments against them, highlighting inconsistencies and biases. The turning point came when a surprise witness, swayed by Elias's dedication and the justness of his cause, came forward. This individual, a mid-ranking official disillusioned with the government's tactics, corroborated Elias's claims about the conspiracy. The courtroom erupted in murmurs as the gravity of the betrayal unfolded before them. The judge, a stern and unyielding figure, called for order. After a lengthy deliberation, she returned to deliver the verdict. Mira was to be acquitted of all charges, the case dismissed due to the manipulations of the ruling class. As the judge pronounced the verdict, the courtroom burst into cheers from the Zeltrons and those who supported justice. Mira, released from her bonds, rushed to Elias, her face radiant with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Elias. You've not only saved me, you've given hope to my people," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Elias felt a surge of pride and relief, yet he knew that this victory was just the beginning. The ruling elite would not take this defeat lightly, and the struggle for the rights of the Zeltrons was far from over. As he looked into Mira's grateful eyes, he realized that his mission on Zellar Prime had grown far beyond his initial scientific pursuits. Together, they had ignited a spark of change, one that promised to burn brightly against the shadows of oppression. In the aftermath of the trial, Elias and Mira became symbols of resistance. Their victory was not just legal but symbolic, challenging the established order on Zellar Prime. Elias's understanding of the political landscape deepened, and he realized that the trial had only exposed the tip of the conspiracy. Mira, now free but forever marked by her ordeal, found herself at the heart of her people's liberation movement. She was a beacon of hope, and her story inspired many among the Zeltrons to seek greater autonomy. Elias, for his part, continued to support her, driven by a conviction that had grown from his initial impulse to save a life into a commitment to a cause. Together, they navigated the complexities of building alliances with other marginalized groups on Zellar Prime. Elias used his connections from Earth and other planets to bring attention to the Zeltrons' plight, leveraging the Galactic Council's influence wherever possible. As their movement gained momentum, so did the threats against them. Elias was nearly caught in an explosion intended for him, saved only by a last-minute warning from a sympathetic local. The incident shook him but also steeled his resolve. He installed security measures and became more cautious, aware that each step forward provoked new dangers. Mira trained to defend herself, no longer the helpless prisoner waiting for rescue. She learned quickly, her agile body and keen mind adapting to the arts of combat and strategy. Elias watched her transformation with a mix of admiration and concern, knowing the path she chose was fraught with risk. Their efforts culminated in a summit held in the towering glass city of Helixar, where representatives of various factions came together to discuss a future free from oppression. Elias prepared the keynote speech, while Mira worked behind the scenes to secure the loyalty of key delegates. The summit was a tense affair, with old grievances and suspicions surfacing. Elias delivered his speech with compelling eloquence, drawing parallels between the struggles faced by species across galaxies. He spoke not just as a human, but as a member of a galactic community where justice should transcend species and borders. Meanwhile, Mira navigated the undercurrents of the summit, her diplomatic skills tested as she brokered tentative deals and neutralized threats through sheer force of will. Her efforts were crucial in keeping the summit on track, as various parties attempted to undermine their objectives. The culmination of the summit was to be a declaration of rights for all beings on Zellar Prime, a document that promised to reshape the planet's governance. As the delegates gathered to sign the declaration, a faction opposed to the changes launched a final desperate attack to stop the proceedings. Chaos erupted as armed insurgents stormed the conference hall. Elias and Mira were separated in the melee. Elias found himself dodging blasts and debris, searching frantically for Mira amid the confusion. His heart raced as he called out her name, fearing the worst. He finally found her cornered by several insurgents, her back against a shattered glass wall. Without hesitation, Elias intervened, using non-lethal weaponry he had reluctantly learned to handle. Together, they turned the tide, subduing their attackers with a combination of strategy and raw determination. The crisis passed, and the declaration was signed, though the ink was stained with the blood of those who fought to defend it. The signed document marked a significant victory, but both Elias and Mira knew that their efforts had merely set the stage for the real struggle to come. As they stood together, their partnership unbroken by the day's events, they prepared for the next phase of their mission, knowing that each step forward would demand their utmost courage and cunning. The declaration from the summit reverberated across Zellar Prime, sparking celebrations among the oppressed and consternation among the rulers. While Elias and Mira had anticipated resistance, the ferocity of the opposition was greater than expected. Their actions had disturbed the fragile balance of power, prompting a crackdown from the ruling elite. In response, Elias intensified his diplomatic efforts. He contacted influential figures across the Galactic Council, detailing the situation on Zellar Prime and requesting support. His communications were a mix of urgent appeals and strategic proposals aimed at securing a protective presence of intergalactic peacekeepers on the planet. Mira, meanwhile, focused on fortifying her people's resolve. She organized secret meetings in the dense jungles of Zellar Prime, places where the censors of the ruling class had less reach. Here, under the cover of towering bioluminescent flora, she trained a cadre of young Zeltrons in the art of clandestine operations. Her leadership was not just tactical but inspirational, as she instilled in her followers a sense of purpose and hope. As the situation escalated, the cityscapes of Zellar Prime transformed into arenas of subtle warfare. Surveillance drones buzzed over markets and squares, and propaganda flooded the info screens, painting Elias and Mira as agitators disrupting the peace. Elias countered this by hacking the public feeds, broadcasting real footage of government brutality that he had painstakingly collected. One evening, as the twin suns of Zellar Prime set, casting long shadows over the city, Elias and Mira met in their makeshift command center, a converted warehouse on the outskirts of the capital. They reviewed reports of increasing troop movements and intercepted messages indicating that a major offensive was imminent. "We need to act fast," Elias stated, his eyes scanning the digital map displaying troop concentrations. "If they strike first, we'll be caught off guard." Mira nodded, her expression grave. "I've been training the teams for an operation like this. We're ready to sabotage their supply lines and communication networks. It won't stop them, but it will slow them down. Give us time to rally more support." Elias agreed, though the risk weighed heavily on him. "We'll need to coordinate our strikes precisely. Any mistake could be disastrous." Plans were drawn up swiftly. The next few days were a blur of activity as Elias and Mira orchestrated a series of guerrilla attacks. They struck at night, targeting armories, satellite stations, and patrol routes. Each successful operation boosted the morale of their followers and attracted more support from the undecided populace. However, the ruling elite were not idle. Retaliatory strikes were brutal, targeting areas known to harbor sympathizers. The conflict grew, no longer confined to shadowy skirmishes but erupting into open confrontation. Amid this chaos, a breakthrough came. Elias received a communication from a Galactic Council envoy, finally agreeing to send a peacekeeping force to oversee negotiations for a new governmental structure. It was a significant, if tentative, victory. The arrival of the peacekeepers temporarily cooled the intensity of the conflict. Mira and Elias met with the envoys in a heavily secured location, presenting their case for a transitional government that would include representation from all of Zeller Prime's diverse factions. Negotiations were tense, with frequent standoffs and heated debates. Elias found himself navigating a minefield of political intrigue, while Mira worked tirelessly to ensure that their grassroots support remained strong and motivated. As they worked through these negotiations, Elias and Mira grew closer, their bond cemented not just by shared ideals, but by the trials they faced together. They were partners in every sense, their fates intertwined with the future they hoped to create for Zeller Prime. The negotiations stretched over weeks, with each session intense and exhaustive. Elias, with his background in interstellar law, took the lead in the discussions, crafting arguments that appealed to both the Galactic Council's principles and the practical needs of Zeller Prime. Mira, on her part, ensured that the spirit and demands of the local populations were accurately represented, bringing a passionate and personal touch to the often sterile environment of diplomatic discourse. As the talks progressed, Elias noticed an undercurrent of reluctance among some of the envoys. It became clear that external political pressures and alliances influenced their stances far more than he had anticipated. To counter this, Elias organized a series of public forums broadcasted across Zeller Prime and to other interested planets. Mira spoke at these events, sharing her story and the broader implications of their struggle. Her speeches, heartfelt and compelling, drew widespread sympathy and support, increasing pressure on the negotiators to reach a fair resolution. Back on the streets and in the hidden enclaves of Zeller Prime, the movement's followers watched the developments closely. The temporary peace brought by the presence of the peacekeepers was tenuous at best. Small skirmishes and demonstrations became daily occurrences, as the populace sought to make their voices heard in the only way they felt they could. Mira coordinated these efforts, ensuring they remained non-violent but forceful, a visible sign of the people's will. Meanwhile, Elias uncovered attempts to sabotage the negotiations from within. Security breaches and misinformation campaigns threatened to derail the progress they had made. Using his network of allies, both local and from across the stars, Elias traced the interference back to a coalition of powerful industrialists on Zeller Prime who stood to lose from the proposed changes. This revelation led to several clandestine operations to neutralize this threat, involving stealth raids and data heists, which Elias planned and Mira executed with precision. As the final round of negotiations began, the stakes were higher than ever. The draft of the new constitution for Zeller Prime was on the table, incorporating significant reforms that would ensure fair representation and redistribute power away from the traditional elites. The debate was fierce, with every clause and comma fought over. Elias's expertise was pivotal in these debates, his arguments refined by the fires of the conflict he and Mira had endured. During a critical session, when it seemed as if a deadlock was inevitable, an unexpected ally emerged from among the other planetary delegates, a seasoned diplomat from a neighboring system who had been silently observing the proceedings. Moved by the resilience of Zeller Prime's people and swayed by the public outcry amplified by Elias and Mira's efforts, he threw his support behind their proposal, tipping the balance in their favor. With this crucial support, the new constitution was ratified, marking a historic transformation for Zeller Prime. The ruling elite, realizing their diminished power, reluctantly accepted the outcome, swayed by the overwhelming international support and the clear mandate from the populace. In the wake of this victory, Elias and Mira stood together in the great hall where the final session had taken place. The air was thick with anticipation and relief. They had navigated through perilous waters to chart a new course for Zeller Prime, a course that promised a fairer, more inclusive governance. The road ahead would undoubtedly hold new challenges, but for the moment, they allowed themselves a brief respite, reflecting on the path they had traveled. As the celebrations began outside, with the cities of Zeller Prime lighting up in jubilation, Elias and Mira looked out at the horizon. The suns were setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape, symbolizing the dawn of a new era. Together, they had changed the destiny of a planet. As the celebrations echoed through the cities and across the valleys of Zellar Prime, Elias and Mira found themselves at the heart of the jubilation. The new constitution not only marked a change in governance, but symbolized a shift in the societal fabric itself. People from all walks of life came forward to express their hopes and dreams for the future, energized by the promise of a more equitable system. In the days that followed the ratification, Elias worked closely with the transitional government to implement the reforms laid out in the Constitution. His role as an advisor was critical, given his deep understanding of intergalactic law and his impartial status as an outsider. He facilitated workshops and training sessions for new government officials, emphasizing the principles of fairness, transparency, and inclusivity. Mira, meanwhile, took on the role of a liaison between the government and the populace, ensuring that the voices of ordinary citizens continued to be heard. Her dedication to her people was unwavering, and she traveled extensively across the planet, from the bustling capital to the most remote settlements, to advocate for community participation in the new political process. As the structure of the new government solidified, so did Elias and Mira's plans for the future. They established a foundation dedicated to fostering education and cultural exchange between Zellar Prime and other planets in the Galactic Council. The foundation also focused on preserving the unique environmental and cultural heritage of Zellar Prime, ensuring that the planet's rapid political changes did not come at the expense of its natural and historical riches. During this period of intense activity, the bond between Elias and Mira deepened further. They were partners not only in their professional endeavors, but in life as well. Their relationship, forged in the heat of shared struggles, became a symbol of the unity and diversity they hoped to foster throughout Zellar Prime. However, peace and reform did not erase the challenges that lay ahead. The entrenched powers, though weakened, still simmered with discontent. Elias and Mira had to navigate complex political waters, where every decision could potentially rekindle old conflicts or create new divisions. They were constantly vigilant, aware that true change required sustained effort and resilience. One late evening, as they walked through one of the newly established peace parks in the capital, Elias reflected on the journey. "It's strange," he mused, looking at the vibrant life around them, children playing among luminous flowers. "To think how much has changed and yet how much remains to be done." Mira nodded, squeezing his hand. "Change is a constant process," she replied, her voice thoughtful. "But look around, Elias. Every smile, every peaceful gathering, it's all a testament to what we've achieved. And every challenge ahead is just another opportunity to strengthen what we've built." Their conversation was interrupted by a call from a newly elected representative, seeking advice on a matter of trade regulation. The issues were ongoing, but both Elias and Mira were undeterred. They were committed to their roles as guardians of the planet's newfound democracy. As they returned to their work, the suns of Zellar Prime dipped below the horizon, casting a radiant twilight that bathed the planet in light. It was a visual reminder of the dawn of a new era, one that Elias and Mira had helped usher in. Their legacy, intertwined with the fate of Zellar Prime, would continue to evolve, driven by their unyielding dedication to peace and justice. Their journey together, though marked by trials, was also filled with moments of profound connection and triumph. And as they faced the future, they did so with the knowledge that they were not merely survivors of their past struggles, but architects of a hopeful, dynamic future.